Nature is a pretty weird thing, and most animals have unique traits that make them, different from one another. And while humans have the very unnatural habit of doom scrolling TikTok for 7 hours a day, there are other animals in this world that actually have unique features that are pretty cool to look at. So today in this video I picked 6 different animals with unique features in absolutely no order that I chose just for the sole reason of me finding them pretty interesting. Starting off our list strong, we have the immortal jellyfish. I think it's important to start with the immortal jellyfish just because a jellyfish's life cycle is pretty weird for me to explain, but I'll try to do my best. So it starts off like many other animals with a fertilized egg. This fertilized egg will then turn into what is called a planula, which is a small living organism that will try and look for any hard surface like a rock or the sea floor. When this planula finally grabs onto something hard, it will then begin to grow and it will turn into something called a polyp. When the polyp is finally done growing, it will do a transformation called budding, in which multiple jellyfish will then, almost like leaves, string off of the polyp. And then these new jellyfish will then finally grow into mature jellyfish that can repeat the cycle over by fertilizing more eggs. If it makes it any easier to explain, you could almost see the planula as being a seed that you put in the ground, and then it grows into a polyp, which you could see as like a tree stem, which then grows into polyp, and then it does the budding process, like leaves falling off and turning into jellyfish. Now I will say I'm pretty lazy at drawing, and I didn't really care about drawing every single part of the process, but I'll throw up a picture here on screen to show you the entire jellyfish life cycle. Now the immortal jellyfish's unique feature is that it doesn't really care about this life cycle, and it will sometimes skip the entire mating process of producing fertilized eggs. Sometimes when the immortal jellyfish feels some kind of stress or in other way has gotten injured, it will sometimes turn into a blob-like thing called a cyst. This cyst will then attach itself to the ground and turn into a polyp, thus repeating the entire life cycle of the jellyfish without ever having to mate. Next animal on our list that we'll be looking over is the narwhal. The thing that makes a narwhal pretty unique is that it has a horn sticking out of its head. Now the narwhal's horn is also pretty unique in that it has 10 million nerve endings inside of it, which makes it a very practical tool for the narwhal when it comes to hunting. Now while scientists don't know the full extent of which the narwhal uses its horn, they know 2 things about it. First of all the million nerve endings inside of it kinda helps the narwhal almost have a radar that can track animal movements and vibrations in the ocean. And the second thing is that when they finally do find the fish they've been looking for so long, they will sometimes just whack the fish with it, almost hitting it with blunt force trauma, which will then sometimes knock out or even kill the fish. They will sometimes engage in play fighting, where they fight with their horns, almost as a sword duel. Next up on our list is another ocean creature, in which I will dub it the sloth of the ocean. I am talking about the Greenland shark. The Greenland shark's life is pretty miserable since it lives at around a kilometer beneath the waves of the ocean. It lives in almost complete darkness and is almost as well blind. What makes this very isolated and dark life even more saddening is that they can live up to 500 years of age. The reason being is that the Greenland shark has a very slow metabolism and their entire life is generally just very boring. They have a maximum speed recorded of 2.9 kilometers an hour. And if you need to put that into perspective, the average human has a walking speed of around 5 kilometers an hour. And while you could say that just because they have a very slow maximum speed, that doesn't mean their life is slow, but this couldn't be any less true for the Greenland shark. You see, the Greenland shark reaches a sexual maturity at the age of around 150. Now when they've finally waited for the grueling 150 years to be able to mate, it doesn't make it any easier on them when they finally need to get children. Now when Greenland sharks finally have mated, it can take 8 to 18 years before there's actually any children that's gonna pop out. If we put that into perspective, let's say you popped out of your mother's womb at the same day that 2 Greenland sharks mate, you could theoretically be able to vote for president in your country before that shark finally gave birth. Next up on our list we have 2 different animals that both come from the same islands, so we'll be having to look at a little bit of geography first. Here we have a beautifully drawn map, if I do say so myself, of Middle and South America. And if we look out here in the middle of the ocean, we can see a couple of specks. Zooming in, we find something called the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands is the first ever UNESCO heritage site and is a group of islands that is a part of the country of Ecuador. The actual islands themselves are located roughly 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador and are therefore pretty isolated from anything else on the mainland. This gives a rise to a bunch of different unique animals that I could make an entire separate video about, but I just decided to choose 2 different animals with very distinct features. First off, we'll be looking at something called the blue-footed bobby. And if you couldn't tell by the name, it has blue feet. There isn't a whole lot to say about the blue-footed bobby other than the fact that they do have blue feet, but it is also notable to mention how the hell they get their blue feet. The blue-footed bobby gets its very unique and distinct blue color in the feet from eating a bunch of fresh fish, which then provides a bunch of different nutrients for it. This is also an indicator of health, and the bluer the feet a bobby has, the better. Now if we look into the actual water part around these islands, we'll find the next animal on our list, which is the red-lipped batfish. And just like the blue-footed bobby, scientists don't really try to hide what makes any animal unique. The red-lipped batfish has very distinct and red lips that it uses for absolutely nothing other than looking like a clown. They also have a nose that hangs over their mouth, which doesn't really help them at all in terms of looks. Now while the red-lipped batfish is, by its name suggests, a fish, it doesn't really use its fins in the traditional way. Since the red-lipped batfish doesn't have any natural predators, it has evolved a very unique feature of walking on its fins. It has a total of what you could call 5 legs that it walks around on the sea floor. And if you think that my picture isn't a pretty good representation of what the actual animal looks like, I'll throw up an image right here. Pretty weird, yeah. Now finally we'll be getting to the end of our list with an animal that you have all probably heard a fun fact about before, and that is the platypus. While there are many different facts I could talk about when it comes to the platypus, like the fact that they sweat milk, I just decided to choose 3 different features about it that I thought that were the easiest to explain. Now while it is also the most known fact about the platypus, I still feel like I have to mention it, and it's the fact that despite being a mammal, the platypus lays eggs, which is a unique feature that's only tied to 5 animals in the world. And while you could already say it's pretty weird being a mammal, looking like a duck and also producing eggs, what's even weirder is the fact that platypuses also shine under a black light. And scientists don't really know the entire purpose behind looking all purple when you're under a black light, but I think it looks pretty cool. And while you could just think the platypus is a small fur creature that can't really do any harms to anyone, you'd be absolutely wrong. Male platypus have behind their hind legs a spine that will produce a venom. Now while this venom isn't exactly deadly towards humans, it is still extremely painful when you get stung by it. That being said, I do also have my own personal problems with the platypus, and it's just that I personally think its color scheme is way too ugly. I'm hereby proposing an idea to the Australian government for creating a different color palette for the platypus. We can start off by giving the platypus a fedora, since I really don't feel like they have that many unique features, and I feel like they're just pretty bland. Next idea is we can kinda change up the entire brown color scheme a bit by maybe painting the entire body of the platypus teal. And while we're at it, we might as well just color the beak and tail in with a different color, just for some extra flair. And this here is my proposal to the Australian government for a new color palette for the platypus. And remember folks, even though they may look very cute, you should never ever pet them, especially behind